This is my heater. I dare you to hit it.
He'll be sorry.
Want the heater? I'll give it to you.
Basketball, maybe they don't hit it.
A swing and a drive to deep right.
Clear the deck. Cannonball coming.
Left field. It is out of here.
What is up? What is good? Baseball Unstitched. We are back as always every Tuesday to talk some ball with you wherever and whenever you may be listening. It's been a really good week of baseball, and the MLB Draft is slowly creeping upon us here. We're really excited. As always, though, we start this podcast with one question and one question only. Flax, how was the weekend?
Weekend was good, as always. I don't know that it'll ever not be good. That's just kind of my personality, if I'm going to be honest with you. Sometimes I say that, and I'm like, did I say that last week? The answer is always yes. But it was good. We picked up another win in the men's league. Otherwise, it was a little bit more relaxing, to say the least, which was nice because I've been to 2 weddings in 3 weekends. And as much as I love those people, one of them being my brother, I needed some time at home. So that was very nice. And we both hit balls off the wall. So looks like we're headed to the gym this week.
I was about to say, that means one thing and one thing only. We better get in the weight room. So,
Or just not playing a crosswind. One of the two.
Crosswind certainly didn't help us. All right, this week, guys, we've got a lot of good on the slate, as mentioned. First and foremost, we are running you through the first of 3 segments here on our Baseball Unstitched Top 30 Big Board. Today you get to hear our number 30 to number 21 prospects in the 2025 MLB Draft. Extremely excited to share this with you and our thoughts on those players. Next, it's going to be a little bit of a story time for us because many of you are trying to figure out what happened to Colson Montgomery, and some of you are asking yourselves, holy crap, is he hitting that well all of a sudden in AAA?
And others might be saying, who is Colson Montgomery? And you're going to find out.
That too. It's a good point. Thank you, Flax. I like that. And then finally, last but not least, we're going to bring back a segment that Flax and I love, and hopefully you do too, and that is the craziest season you have never heard of. But first and foremost, opening thoughts. I'm going first this week, Flax, and I need the MLB to put a rule on intentionally walking guys in back-to-back plate appearances because I like to watch James Wood hit. And watching him get intentionally walked 4 times in a row on Sunday was infuriating. However, 7-4 Nationals, so didn't really work. There you go.
No, it did
That's what
not.
I got this week.
I have the 2 teams that I think are the under-the-radar seasons that are happening right now. The St. Louis Cardinals are playing above 500 baseball and good above 500 baseball. There's a lot of reasons for it. Too many to count, but when it all boils down, they're starting to find their young core again, and the older guys who you're expecting to play well are playing well. Sonny Gray is throwing the ball like his younger self. Nolan Arenado is hitting the ball like he's back in Colorado, and the rest of the lineup is making it work around him. The Miami Marlins, I said this at the beginning of the year, and I made no claims that I thought they'd be a 500 ball club, make the playoffs, any of that. But I did say they would surprise people with how much better they were than expected. They're a young team. They play with a lot of fire. They have a lot of pitchers that should be doing better than they are. If you imagine how much better those pitchers could be, they actually could be over 500 right now because they're only a few games back of it. But they're on a 7-game win streak, or at least they were up to the point that we were recording this on Monday. It's all because they had the ability to hit the baseball. They're hitting 270 as a team over that hitting streak. Kyle Stowers, Otto Lopez, both hitting extremely well within that hitting streak, or within that win streak, excuse me. And the Marlins did it while going on the road. They traveled from Miami all the way across the country to San Francisco and Arizona, and they took care of business. They took 2 or 3 from the Braves before that. So that's what I got as my opening thought. Keep an eye out to the Marlins and the Cardinals playing better baseball, and they deserve their flowers.
Yeah, turning Trevor Rogers and cash considerations into Kyle Stowers and Otto Lopez. Pretty impressive.
Kyle Stowers and Connor Norby, but...
No, cash considerations.
Oh, cash considerations for Otto Lopez. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got
respectively.
him.
Yeah, separately and respectively. That's on me.
Either way,
Who am I to question your ball knowledge?
it's okay. That's why we're both here. It wouldn't be fun if we didn't. Let's move into something, again, as we've already stated, very excited to share with you guys. That is our segment with the one and only Jackson Scudder, who helped us build our big board this year. The first installment of our Baseball Unstitched Top 30 Big Board for the 2025 MLB Draft. We're here, really excited for this segment. This is the first segment of the Baseball Unstitched 2025 MLB Draft board. We start this off with something very simple. We sat down as a group, me, Jackson, and Flax, and we put together our top 30, basically, big board for all of you. Each week, we're going to be exploring 10 names on our big board, starting from 21 to 30 today. Every week, you're going to see us drop the next 10 on the big board on Twitter in a thread. So we're excited to share that with you guys. And then every Tuesday, we will come on the pod up until the draft, and we're going to talk about these guys in a little bit more depth. Very excited for this. You know, when we sat down and talked about this at first, we tried to decide how we wanted to do this. And mock drafts in baseball, due to the way the draft works, that didn't feel like the right way for us to attack this. It's very important that we come to you with our truly pure thoughts on all of these players, why they're ranked where they're ranked in this top 30, and expect to see a lot of what we hope is greatness out of these guys, because we did truly sit down and look at what we felt was a top 100 group and really rein it in. So let's just hammer right into this. I'm super excited at where we're starting, because let me tell you what, Gavin Fiend has a lot to like. Gavin Fiend comes in at number 30 for us. For those of you who don't know, he is a prep third baseman infielder out of Great Oaks, California, 18 years old, 6'3", 200 pounds. One of the first things you notice about Fiend outside of his athleticism is his absolute tree trunks for legs. We're talking about a guy who possesses a ton of pop.
Yep.
He's got great athleticism. And the best way to describe Fiend, he doesn't really do anything poorly on a baseball field. There's nothing that scouts, I think, are going to look at and grade under a 50. But he has a couple tools that you may look at and say, that's something I can dream on over that 50 number. Listen, right-handed swinger, has played a lot of shortstop in high school due to the size and some of his movement. People are expecting him to go to third. What do we think about Fiend here, guys? And give us your thoughts of why he's here.
I like his build a lot. I mean, 6'3", 200 as an 18-year-old. I don't know what there is to not like about that, if we're being honest. We watched some videos of him, and I really like the adjustments that he makes as he grows into his body a little bit more. When he was, 3-4 months ago going through Perfect Game Showcase, very quick, very amped up as a defender, very quick, very amped up as a hitter. As you started to see him in the draft combine, he seemed much more relaxed. He seemed much more sure of his game, of himself. His footwork in the infield on ground balls was much smoother. I like how quiet his glove is. I don't love when guys are moving their hands all around. I've always been a big believer that you field your ground balls with your legs, not with your hands. You got to get yourself to a spot, let your hands do their job. He does that very well. And he does the same thing in the box. He lets his hands do a lot of the work. He's a very strong kid. His body's already going to move in a good way, but he lets his hands be quick to the ball, and it seems to do a lot of the heavy lifting for him. Jackson, what were some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I really liked him. Like I said, we were watching a video earlier, and it looked like he had a quick bat and a high bat speed, and that's obviously something that doesn't mean everything, but it shows that there's a lot of explosiveness in the bat. I think it's a guy whose powers could translate better than we're thinking right now. That frame, the bat speed, I think he has a quick bat through the zone. I think he has potential to be a 25-30 homer guy and potential to play a couple different positions as well. This is a guy who could probably play corner outfield relatively easily, just based off judging what scouts are grading his arm and his field as. He is a guy who could probably translate to corner outfield relatively easily.
I think it's really important for everyone to remember, and I'm glad that you said this, that as he grows, his power will translate, is these guys the guys we're going to talk about are 18 to 21 years old. You are not in the prime of your athleticism at 18 to 21 years old. You are entering it, but more than likely, when you're a 24, 25-year-old big leaguer, that's the power point of your strength. That's when you're going to see guys 24 to 28 really be their strongest and their most successful most of the time. And so thinking about how a 6'3", 200-pound frame now turns into a 6'3", 225-pound frame of straight muscle, and learning, understanding the game a little better, facing harder pitching at that next level, all those things that can truly translate to a lot more homers. The quickness can only improve if he does things the right way.
I think the other piece I really do want to make sure that we talk about with Thien before we move to our next guy at number 29 is the fluidity in his swing, the timing mechanisms that he uses. He's obviously a guy who at this age has a very strong core. He can hang a little bit on that swing. When his weight stays back and there's no drift to his swing, he delivers the barrel as good as any guy in this prep class. Very excited to see what he does. The way he takes his swing is going to generate massive amounts of backspin, which, hey, by the time he gets to the league, we're going to talk a lot more about that, is what's the most fun part about making that statement.
I can't wait for it.
I know you can't. Very excited about Thien. Jackson did hit on the one other piece for him. We talk about him not doing anything poorly on the field. He does come with a very, very good arm. Another reason why he could make any throw at short. But I think that arm is going to help him play in the corner outfield spots. And we're going to talk about another young player who is also 18 here in a couple that is kind of the same way, in our opinion, with where he might end up. But let's move on here to number 29 now. Max Ballou, outfielder out of the University of Texas, 21 years old, 6'2", 215, another absolutely excellent frame. When we talk about Ballou, it's super simple. He's a left-handed hitter with feel to hit. And boy, oh boy, when we use the verbiage deliver the barrel, does he ever deliver the barrel? Ton of backspin. He has pop to both sides of the field. We're a little bit iffy, I think, as a group on his overall defensive prowess. However, the swing, I think, will play at just about any level.
Yeah, one of the things that we saw in a lot of his videos was his ability to just get his hands to the ball. I always like to talk about hitting. It's a connection of your lower half and your hands. Your brain knows where it wants to take the barrel. You're at that point in your career, your hand-eye coordination and your decision-making take over. The more you can get your brain out of the process and let it do its job, the better hitter you can become. His ability to keep his hands back for a long time, start everything with a strong lower half that stays in itself, stays balanced, and then allows him to deliver the barrel, like you said, in a very quick rate. We saw him hit a 96-mile-an-hour fastball off Chase Shores early in the year against LSU. 96 in on the hands. He kept it inside the pole, not a hook job around the pole in any way, shape, or form, and blasted it out to right field. The other thing we noticed is that he didn't hit a ton of home runs this year, but the home runs he hit were absolutely demolished. I think he hit 3 of them in the preseason tournament at Globe Life. Like, he has big league pop. Once he gets a little bit stronger, again, gets into that window of 24 to 28, and he's got that size and that growth, the likelihood is his doubles turn into home runs.
Yeah, the ability to backspin a line drive over the 406 dead center wall in Globe Life.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Very impressive, regardless of the metal bats, so on and so forth. I love as well, not only is the swing smooth, not only can he keep his hands inside the ball, it is a very, very short and quick load, which I think allows him to consistently get to the same spot with his hands. At a higher level, as people continue to throw harder with better stuff, your ability to be in the right load position consistently is so important. I can't talk enough about Ballou's feel to hit, and I'm very excited. I do truly, again, and I don't mean this poorly, I think if I felt like he could stick in the corner outfield, he might have been a lot higher on this board. It's just that is difficult when you are looking at this level. So, Jackson, any thoughts on Ballou before we move to one of your guys?
Yeah, this was a guy coming into the year who had a lot more draft time in 2024. Played the full season, 18 home runs, 15 doubles, 667 slug. This year just played in 32 games and still had a really good year. I think the bat tool is really, really good. And still hit 9 home runs, hit 303 this year in 32 games. He doesn't strike out a whole lot. It's a good walk guy, and I think the defense is the question. But this is a guy, if the bat's as good as we think it's going to be, you find a spot for him in your lineup. You find a spot for him in the field. because I think the bat has the potential to be really, really good if he can stay healthy.
I love it. I love it. Well, listen, Jackson, we're going to let you open the floor on this next one as our not only analytics guru, but one of our pitching gurus on this podcast. And at number 28, we have Patrick Forbes, a right-handed pitcher out of Louisville. And Jackson got an up-close and personal view of his stuff. He's a 20-year-old, 6'3".
For better or worse.
For better or worse. 6'3", 220 pounds. You want to talk about a high ceiling. This guy can run the fastball up to 100, comes from an interesting slot. He's got a slider that, as Jackson will tell you here shortly, does play a little bit as a sweeper at times. Some of the best stuff in this entire draft. Jackson, tell us about Patrick Forbes.
Yeah, I got to watch him in person. I didn't know a whole lot about him before that, but for those of y'all who don't know, I work for ETSU Baseball. We made a regional opening game. We saw Forbes on the bump. Did not go great for us. This was a guy who's dominated and did good in the ACC despite being just a two-pitch guy, which we do not see that much anymore. I remember there were a couple scouts there at the game I was at. I was in the stands as well. And they were just like, he's not awesome right now. He's good right now. But you can just sit here and dream about what this guy's going to be in 3-4 years. And I think that's the main thing. This is a guy who's 95, 96 going into the 5th, 6th inning. Hit 100 in the first inning. Has a slider 80, 82 that has negative 10 horizontal, 0 IVB. Plays like a mini sweeper, and it gets a lot of swings and misses. Yeah. And those are basically the only two pitches he throws right now. I think this is a guy whose ceiling is a good reliever in the big leagues. I think with those two pitches, if he gains a couple more ticks on the fastball,
his floor is a good reliever in the big leagues.
Yeah, my bad.
I was going to say, we're not giving him a lot of room to reach for.
His floor is a good reliever in the big leagues. And his ceiling, if he can add in a cutter, a splitter, or change up, something like that, this is a guy who's potential to be a frontline ace. Struck out, I think, 13, 14 guys per 9 this year in the ACC. That's not easy to do. This guy's electric. He's fun to watch. Love Patrick Forbes.
Yeah, there are guys in the big leagues that are very heavily two-pitch guys that are good dominant starters. They develop a third pitch that's good enough to keep the big league hitters at least enough on their toes, and it allows them to kind of pitch differently to righties and lefties and works their way through lineups 2 to 3 times. There's different ways to go about it. But one thing that you'll always notice about guys that are at this level of, on our board at least 30 and higher, if they are a pitcher, they spin the ball very well. They spin the ball above average. Because what you can understand as a pitching coach, as one of these pitching labs at the MLB level is, if a guy has the physical ability to spin a ball a certain way, and we can understand how he releases, how he lets go of the ball, there is any number of pitches we could make him throw, or we could at least get him to try to throw, and we can work to develop another pitch or two. It's not out of the realm of possibility for guys that have a ceiling like this. The intangibles of throwing upper 90s is what sets him apart and gives him the opportunity to take it to the next level. And then again, an above average spin rate, breaking ball that plays multiple different ways. And whether or not he's at a point yet in his progression where he knows how to make the ball do different things, or if it just moves enough that he can get it to kind of have a little bit more depth here and there, or have it, have a little more sweep here and there, it may just come out that way. But again, the opportunity to take a guy who can already spin the ball that way and turn out a couple more pitches. Ryan, I know you were talking about maybe a splitter from the arm angle that he's coming at if he's not comfortable throwing a changeup or holding a ball that way.
I look at the intangibles that this guy, I should say Forbes has, and I see exactly why Jackson sat down around professional scouts and they go, can you imagine the ceiling on this kid? It doesn't take much.
Right.
The 2 pitches he throws, though there are some general control issues, which, hey, listen, when you throw that hard, of course there's going to be. And when you have that much movement on your breaker, of course there's going to be at times. But when you leave college, you get drafted this high, and your life becomes about baseball, I have a feeling a guy like this will end up having the ability to be a starter at the next level, and we are going to see him develop 1 to 2 more pitches. I love the thought process when we talked about him. I do want to mention one of the things I will always believe in is that when a guy goes pro at first, it's not your job to change anything. He became a pro with what he had, so you do need to let him throw that, learn, and move from there before you start trying to change all these things about him. I see Forbes as a guy who adding a cutter, adding a splitter, depending on the comfortability of throwing these pitches, will benefit him in the long run. It'll be very interesting to see. And guess what? If it doesn't, Jackson's right. His floor is actually probably a high leverage reliever. I don't even know that his floor is just an everyday reliever. The fastball and the sweep slider play. So, Patrick Forbes, awesome prospect. Very happy to be ranking him in our top 30. Think there's a lot of ceiling there. Let's move to number 27, and this is one that I get to start on because he might be my favorite player in this entire draft. I don't shut up about him ever. Quentin Young.
We watched exponentially more video of Quentin Young in our prep than we watched of any other player because Ryan just couldn't help himself and just kept wanting to watch him hit and field.
Quentin Young, third baseman, outfielder out of Oaks Christian, California. 18, 6'6", 225 at the current moment. Top 3 raw power in the draft, no questions asked. We know at the top of the draft, a lot of people like to talk about Holiday's pop potential. I think Young's rivals that in its own way. A guy with a 70-grade arm. He comes from MLB lineage with his uncles, Dimitri Young and Delman Young. Shout out to the meat hook. Love you, man. Made my childhood great. But we're here to talk about Quentin. One of the most athletic players in the draft, and again, with some of the most pop. What do you guys think about Quentin Young?
I think he's a special talent. I think when you see a guy that size move the way that he does, it reminds you very much of guys like Elly De La Cruz, right? Just oversized for the position they play, but still find a way to make it look easy. I think in watching him take ground balls, there's probably a little bit less flexibility in it than I see with a guy like Elly. Again, something to grow into, potentially something that gets better as he gets a little bit older here. But the likelihood is I could see him more as a corner outfield or a corner or a third baseman. I could really see him in right field. He's got a really, really good arm. But at the plate, the smoothness with which he gets into a hitting position and the way that his lower half moves is so quick, it's no shock that he's putting balls 115, 116 off the barrel. It looks so effortless in the way that he gets going, and then the violent nature at which he really gets his lower half into some of these swings. At the combine, he was putting balls to dead center that in BP that a guy like that should never be hitting, and they had height on them too. They're not like line drives. They're big, deep, professional fly balls. Knowing what can come behind that. And then the only other thing I'll say is pedigree, 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 pedigree. It matters. There is no sport like baseball in which guys who have relatives that have played the game at the highest level have a much higher percentage chance to make it to the next level. Being in and around the game, having people that help you through the toughest part, which is between your ears, and understanding how to take it to the next level, still play your game, and still work through the hard times because they will come because it's a game of failure, are intangibles that cannot be measured that you know Quentin Young's coming to the table with. So that's how I feel about him. I think I agree with you. I think he's an incredible player in this draft. I don't know that he's my favorite player in the draft, but he's definitely high up there.
I think the O'Neal Cruz comp is really good. It's a guy who's really, really toolsy, a big body that can hit the ball really far, has a good arm. I don't think he's as athletic in terms of quickness as Cruz, but from the stuff I've read on him, it's that he's quicker than you might think he is with his frame, and about how I remember scouts were impressed about how he didn't look as bad as they thought he would at shortstop. They still think he profiles as a third baseman, but I think the power is really raw. I think it's going to be there.
Sounds like we're talking about Delman Young.
100%. 100%. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I think this is a guy who also has the potential to rack up some outs above average in the outfield and have a really good arm value out there. I think he can really help his value out there if that ends up being the spot he goes to. Yeah, I really like Quentin Young as well.
Great player. Very excited to see where Young ends up getting drafted. Moving to number 26 here, a name that everybody became familiar with if they weren't already during the Men's College World Series. Gage Wood, right-handed pitcher out of Arkansas, 21 years old, 6 foot, 205 pounds. And the one thing you need to know about Gage Wood over everything else is he essentially had one of the, if not the best fastballs in all of college baseball this year. I believe one of the highest whiff rates across the board. One of the things he does, in my opinion, as we had the opportunity to really evaluate him, is he comes out of the same slot with all of his pitches. The biggest knock on him was sometimes the breaking ball pops out of his hand a little bit and allows hitters to see it better. However, when it's not doing that, guys are taking swings that tell you they don't know what's coming, and the fastball is already unhittable to begin with, as the whiff rates have shown us.
Yeah, I thought that the Murray State game was really the no-hitter was really indicative of how good that curveball can be, because if you watched the lead up for Murray State and you paid any attention to their season, it was not a ball club that was poor at hitting. It was a ball club that absolutely mashed the baseball. And they did it against very, very, very good arms. I mean, they were putting up 14 and 15 runs in an Oxford regional. You're not doing that against bad arms at that stage in your season. And then they looked silly against a fastball that he rode really well at the top of the zone and a curveball that he had no problem banging into the dirt whenever he wanted to when he got ahead on guys. The ability to spin the ball like that, to make hitters that have been on an incredible run and are about as hot as it gets to get to that point in their season. But that wasn't the only time he did it all year. That was a consistency for him throughout the entire season. That was a big reason why that team was where they were, because his ability to really run that fastball wherever he wanted in the zone was at an elite level. I mean, he did have a higher whiff rate than Cade Anderson and Liam Doyle, who we talked about all year having dominating fastballs from the left side. You're talking about a guy from the right side that was just pumping it past people and throwing it through barrels. Fastballs are not pitches that often get thrown through barrels unless they have something unique about them. And then the other part of it is the way he goes about throwing. It's very quiet, it's very smooth, and then it is extremely violent when it needs to be. It's a very, very long lever from the point that he gets to the top of his release to coming through the ball. And it's very unique because he's very quick to get the ball up to that point. It almost looks short army until it wasn't, until you really slowed it down. He's just so quick to get the ball to that point. And I think that's also why he's able to get into such a tight slot. But hitters, really struggled with getting timing and getting a feel for what was coming. And that was all season long. He's also just a psycho on the mound. Like, you want to talk about man in the arena? You want to talk about a guy who just gets into the zone and locks in and is ready to mow you down. It's true mano-a-mano every time a guy steps in the box. That's him. That's absolutely what you want to see out of a guy if you're looking to draft a guy that has, as Jackson would say, a floor of being a really, really good reliever at the next level.
This is a guy, I love his fastball profile a lot. It plays as like a cut right almost, 17, 18 IVB, just like 5'6" horizontal. And I think his arm angle is what makes it good. He just throws 95, 96, 97. That's really hard, but you would not expect his whiff rate numbers to be as good on a pitch of just that velo. But I think the arm angle makes it for him. And this is a guy who's been through some stuff at Arkansas. His first year, just as a reliever, walked everybody. Second year, still reliever, gave up a lot of hits, gave up a lot of runs. This year, spent some time. He was injured for a little bit, just made 10 starts. But his numbers looked a lot better this year. 69 strikeouts in 37 innings. That's basically all you need to know. This guy strikes everybody out, just a two-pitch pitcher. This is another guy from me, similar to Forbes, in which the ceiling is really, really high. Has more potential to add more pitches into the arsenal as well. I love Gage Wood. I think he's a very fun arm to watch.
Comp for me when I saw him and we started talking about him as a reliever was Wade Davis. Like a guy who comes into the league with the intent to be a starter, gets to the bullpen, and gets to a place where he can run the ball up there to a very, very high velo with a banging curveball, and he's just nails out of the bullpen because his goal, again, I say this all the time, he had a closer's mentality. None. Right? The moment doesn't phase a guy like that because there's nothing going on between the ears when it doesn't need to be. He just gets up there and does the thing, and it's mano-a-mano, and he takes care of business. That's the kind of guy that you want in that spot, and that's who Wade Davis was when the Royals needed him to be in that stretch that they had. And I genuinely see that same thing out of a guy like Gage Wood.
All right, I love the comp. Again, I find a guy who is so quiet and fluid in his mechanics, and then that quick move that also looks like it hides the baseball a little bit as well, and everything just jumps on you with that fastball. Very excited to see how he develops, but I see Gage Wood as a guy who should be getting a lot of talk in the first round. Moving along to number 25 here, a guy that all three of us have talked about a lot all year. He's been talked about even before this year by many people other than us, and that is Coastal Carolina's Caden Bodine, again coming in at number 25, catcher out of Coastal, 21 years old, 5'11", 200 pounds. We could sit here all day and rave, absolutely rave about Caden Bodine's defense. He threw out 55% of the guys who tried to run on him. Why anybody continued to try to run on him is a mind-boggling piece to me, because analytically you've got to get there 75% of the time for it to help you. However, switch hitting catcher, some of the best bat-to-ball skills in all of college baseball. Flax, I got to give you the floor on Bodine, man.
Well, we got to start with the fact that he is a switch hitting catcher. So, kids, if you want to get to the big leagues, the fastest way to get to the big leagues is to be either a really good left-handed hitting catcher or be a switch hitting catcher. But that aside, he's very good at it. He had an unbelievable walk to strikeout ratio this year at the Dish. He was
24
40,
strikeouts, 47.
yeah, 24 strikeouts, 47 walks. So he's almost doubling up walks to strikeouts. And then on the flip side, as a catcher, he's throwing out 19 of 30 guys, only 3 passed balls. 2 big things you need to know about Caden Bodine. You throw a fastball over the plate, he's not missing it. So be careful where you throw it. And then the other thing you need to recognize is that his ability to catch strikes, and what I mean by that is to earn strikes with the umpire, is second to none in college baseball. There's so much research out there about it. We have a ton of data around how many strikes he got relative to everybody else around the zone this year. It was absolutely phenomenal. And the reason he does it is because he manages his pitching staff at a collegiate level as if he is in a big league, he's working with a big league staff. His ability to know his starters, know what they throw, know where they like to throw it, and set himself up accordingly to take advantage where he can and not just take advantage of everything that gets thrown is why he's successful. He sets the precedent for the umpire of where the umpire should expect pitches to be thrown, and then he allows his pitcher to continuously stay in that area the entire game. That's why he's successful. That's what really, really, really good catchers do. A guy like Francisco Alvarez does it extremely well with his pitchers. When he's got guys that he knows throw a lot of splitters and a lot of sinkers, he forces the bottom of the zone to lower by getting the ball out in front and catching those pitches before they dive on him. That's what good catchers do. But yeah, that's why I love him so much, because he just plays above the level that he's at.
Yeah, I think this is a guy, the main issue with him right now is the power. Hasn't produced a lot of power in college, but I think the power is going to come as he gets older, gets more matured, and figures out, because he has the bat-to-ball skills. I think he has the pop in the bat, just hasn't known how to get it right now. I think another thing with him, we've talked about with a couple other guys, he has a really high floor. With his defense, I think this is a guy who, if he has a 660 OPS in his career, he will play 10 years as a backup catcher.
Austin Barnes, baby.
Exactly. I think this is a guy with a high floor as well. I love Caden Bodine. The way he controls the game is awesome. Such a fun player to watch.
Yeah, Bodine is excellent. Very excited to see what he does at the next level. All right, and at number 24, this might just be Jackson's favorite guy in the entire draft. I really don't know at this point. The way we talk about Riley Quick out of Alabama, right-handed pitcher. 21 years old, 6'6", 255 pounds. Jackson's got a real fun story about the other thing he was doing in high school. But first off, big-bodied right-hander. He throws, I believe, 5 pitches. I really, really like what I've seen with him. He runs the fastball up to upper 90s. Gets a little dead zoney, but he's a guy who sports a sinker and a cutter right now, throwing also a slider and a changeup. Listen, we've talked about floors a lot. Let's just throw floors out the window here. Quick's got one of the highest ceilings for any starter in this draft, And part of it is his overall pitchability right now. I love what I'm seeing out of Quick. He's a guy that I feel like is a major league organization I look at and say he's got the frame that can handle the velo he's throwing with. And obviously, if he's already throwing 5 pitches with some type of feel, there's a lot of moldability. If when he goes in and we give him the opportunity with that stuff, he's going to be able to maneuver, move, and change as the league adjusts to him. I'm a big fan of Quick.
Clearly an athlete.
Yeah,
Clearly an athlete. And Jackson, tell us what makes him such an athlete.
I love Quick. When I was doing research on him, I posted a thread on him for our Twitter about a month or so ago, maybe 2 months ago. The first thing I saw on him, he was a 4-star offensive lineman prospect coming out of high school. I love that so much. It shows to me, if you've watched football, those offensive linemen know how to move. They know how to maneuver their bodies. They know good with hand placement, good with moving their feet. And that's something that's very important for pitchers. You see a lot of pitchers these days who are just throwers and don't know how to move their body. I do not think Quick is one of those guys. Quick also, as Ryan mentioned, he's already thrown 5 pitches. We do not see at this level a lot of guys who are throwing in the upper 90s and sporting a 5-pitch mix. I love Quick. I think he's a really, really fun arm to watch pitch. Like I said, like Ryan said, he's my favorite pitcher in the draft. I just think his ceiling is so high with the 5-pitch mix. I think there's a lot of different stuff you can do with his arsenal as well. I think a ride fastball or a power sinker are both possible with the way he throws. I believe he has a 5'8" release slot, which is a little bit lower than you would expect for his 6'6" frame. And I think that helps the fastball run up and get up on people quicker as well.
He is a mammoth of a human being. And I mean that in the nicest way possible. Like, as a hitter, seeing a guy that size come at you and dig into the ground at a 5'8" release point is uncomfortable. Especially when he can find a release point where he's throwing multiple pitches out of that same slot. He does make hitters uncomfortable. And his stuff, he went from being Alabama's Sunday guy to being their Saturday guy this year because his stuff just continued to get better. As the season went along, his outings continued to get better. You could tell that not only did he have that pitch mix, he started to get more comfortable utilizing it, and he started to get ahead of guys more. He started to be able to control the game and the pace of the game and what he wanted to throw in different at-bats a lot more. And I really find it fascinating that he went to Alabama because there are so many other schools that he probably could have played both sports at. And I don't know that you get to be a 4-star lineman at Alabama. I think you have to be a 5-star to get to go there. Like, he could, like, I just think it's the one place he chose where he couldn't play both sports, unfortunately.
I would pay so much money to see a Friday guy in the spring and an offensive guard in the fall. That's just the perfect combo. Every time we see
it'd be unbelievable.
Every time we see 2-sport athletes, it's like corners or quarterbacks, guys who are known for the athletic position. An offensive guard and a Friday night ace would be the perfect combo.
Well, there was a guy for Oregon, and I'm going to forget his name, but I know where I can find it, so I'm going to tell it to you in 2 seconds. No, I don't know where to find it. There was a guy for Oregon who was a football player and baseball player, 2-sport guy, and like watching him hit, he looked like he was oversized to be in a batter's box. But I believe he got drafted by a major league ball club and went back to school this past fall to play football at Oregon and then report to minor league camp because he still had time to get his education. And,
linebacker. This guy is a linebacker.
Yes.
I'm almost positive.
Yeah.
I know who you're talking about, and spinning out his name is going to hurt us. So, Jackson, you've got some homework for later.
Yeah,
Let us know
Sounds
what
good.
linebacker for Oregon reported to extended spring training recently. Listen, we could talk about Quick all day. It's very obvious that this group is high on what he can do and the potential moldability that he brings to the table. We're going to move up to number 23 now, and this is one of the highest risk, highest reward guys in the draft. And I don't say that in a negative way. I think anytime you're taking one of the, or potentially the youngest player in this entire draft, you're going to take on risk because that's how it works with youth. Steele Hall, shortstop out of Hewitt, Trussville, Alabama. He's 17 years old and will not be 18 until right after the draft. 6 foot, 180 pounds. He actually reclassified from the 2026 draft to the 2025 draft. And that honestly looks like it's going to pay off. We're talking about a kid here with good frame, good ability to add to that frame once he becomes a pro. He is already off-rip a plus speed guy. He has the potential to be a plus defender at short with an above-average arm. I love the athleticism and tools that Hall brings to the table. He's got a really, really quick and short swing when you watch it in BP that does tend to get a little bit long in games. However, we're talking about a kid who hasn't turned 18 yet. There's a lot to like here.
A lot of room to grow. It's funny because, and I'm by no means comparing their talent, because that is not, it's not even close. He plays with this reckless abandon that like only young kids play with, and I remember thinking that about a guy like Bryce Harper, where it's just like he's so happy to be playing baseball. He's so happy that everyone around him thinks he's really good at baseball and that he is really good at baseball, and so he's just doing the thing. And like that is truly what it looks like when he's playing, and it's a blast to watch. My big question is, when he gets drafted, does he actually get to choose whether or not he signs his contract, or do his parents have to? Because I'm thinking at 17, his parents will have to co-sign, or they'll have to wait till he turns 18 to actually sign the contract.
He turns 18 a few days after the draft,
okay.
So they might just wait.
I would assume he'll wait. I assume they wouldn't let him reclass if the intent was to get drafted and then not let him go after getting drafted. But that aside, like, I do love his tools. I love his quickness, but that's the stuff that you're going to see out of a 17-year-old that is reclassing to be on the board, right? There's no expectation he's going to be anything other than that, or he was going to be a 6'7" arm that threw absolute gas. It was going to be one of the two, because otherwise, at that age, you're probably just going to stay a junior. So upsides there. You could say he could be the steal of the draft.
My comp with him.
Thank you.
My comp with him was Trey Turner without as much pop. I think the run ability is there. He's a very fast guy that projects 20, 25, 30 stolen base guy. I think he's a good fielder as well. If you remember early in Trey Turner's career, he played a little outfield as well. I think this is a guy who, if need be, can move can play center field as well as shortstop. I think he has a very high defensive upside. I think there's, like we've talked about the whole time with these prep bats, young guys who still have a lot of room to mature. I think this is a guy who can profiles as a super utility guy, has the potential to be that. I think he's a fun player, and yeah.
No team in baseball will look at this athletic, speedy, very already field to defend player and not think anything other than he can play up the middle of the field. We talk about how important it is to have guys who can play up the middle of the field, because when you can play up the middle of the field, you tend to be able to play everywhere, with potentially the exception of being behind the plate, which is completely fair because the skill sets are different. Hall's upside is there. I love the way Flax put this. He just looks like every time you see him, he loves playing baseball, and I think there's a lot to like. Again, as young as he is, let's see how this gets managed. Let's see where he ends up, but there's a lot that he could do. Let's move on to number 22, and that is going to be another prep bat. Now, this guy reminded us of one Jock Peterson very, very quickly when we had the opportunity to see him swing the bat, and that is JoJo Parker. He's a prep shortstop out of Purvis, Mississippi, 18 years old, 6'2", 200-pound left-handed hitter. Got a smooth swing. You know, the biggest thing that we saw with him that at the time knocked him down our draft board a little bit more than others was his tendency to drift. And then at the draft combine, rather than drifting forward with the step, he started to have a little bit of a hang, and we saw some things we really loved out of it. An athletic defender who will probably be able to play multiple positions in the infield and potentially move to the outfield as needed. But the hit tool is what people love because the pop off of Parker's bat is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was fascinating. He is a very, very whippy swing, and it's not even the quickest. It sometimes gets a little long, but it's got a lot of whip to it, which is creating a ton of that pop. When you see his swing, it doesn't look like he's got the quickest lower half. He's not generally using as much of his backside as I think he's going to end up using as he starts to progress as a hitter and gets in the cage with some guys who are going to shift a little bit of what he does. But I love seeing his ability to hang a little bit more and still have the strength to maintain that type of swing. When we did see the adjustment from one video to the next, that was clearly a 3 to 4 month period of time, because it showed that he had a little bit of coachability, a little bit of adjustability in what he was able to do. Again, he has quick enough hands. I think the swing gets a little bit long from the left side right now, but the positions that he gets his body into is everything you'd ever want to see, and he backspins the ball like you've never seen before. Some of the videos from his high school games and the balls that he is launching pull side only happen when you backspin the baseball, because they're not balls that he's hooking over the fence with a ton of topspin because he hits it harder than anybody else. They are smooth swings where he catches the ball correctly, gets the barrel out to it out in front, and it's genuinely pretty fun to see. I'm not quite sure where I feel like his upside is as a defender, and on the other side of the ball is really the best way I could say it. But I also know that he's 18 years old and there's room for growth. He's probably going to get a little stronger. He's probably going to thin out a little bit. He's probably still got a little bit of time to grow, which is crazy to say about these guys getting drafted. But they could still get another 1-2 inches in the next couple of years. So I like his stuff. I do think that he's easily within the top 30. I just don't know that I have him within the top 15, which is where most boards have him right now.
Yeah, I think he has a lot of pop on the bat. I remember we were all watching together, and I think we all said Jock Peterson at the exact same time, or we're thinking it. I think this is a guy who can profile the 30 home run guy relatively easily. Yep. I could see him being a righty specialist as well. He's a left-handed bat. See him as a guy who mainly faces right-handed pitching. Same as Flax. I'm not sure where he's going to end up defensively, but I think the power has a lot of. The power is what you love about him. I think this is a guy, like I said, can be a 25-30 homer guy, I think, pretty easily.
And, we've said we're not exactly sure where people fit defensively a lot today. I think one of the big things that you're going to see within our top 30, though, is almost every single one of these guys possesses an above-average arm, which allows you more defensive flexibility, and I think that's really important for us to bring into our thought process and how we evaluate these guys. We know if you have some relative plus arm and decent athleticism, we can probably find a space for you. And yeah, the space is potentially first base in some of these scenarios. The space is potentially DH in some of these scenarios. But most of the guys that we've talked about today, maybe outside of one, none of these guys are going to profile as DH. And in a top 30, and the way we look at this board, I think that's a really important statement for us to make. Let's go and move on to the final guy in this 10 that we're unveiling today. At number 21. A guy that Flax is going to get to talk about here right off the bat is Andrew Fisher, first base, third base, corner infielder out of Tennessee, 21 years old, 6'1", 210 pounds. Dude just hits home runs. It's kind of what he does.
You know who I see when I see him in the box? And I didn't tell you guys this, but I was thinking it. I see a lot of Derek Dietrich. The quick hands, kind of a very short swing, but insane pop from a guy who doesn't profile that big, but is absolutely yoked. And they do kind of both have a little bit of the same swagger and piss and vinegar that they just kind of bring to the field. It's like, what I did say to you guys is, it's like he created a chip on his shoulder, whether he deserved to have a chip on his shoulder or not, because he just kind of needed it. And I love that. I love that about him, because that's what gets him going. I had a coach that always said, you don't need to find level, you need to find your level. Some guys play high energy, some guys play low energy. You got to find your level. He clearly this year, and honestly the year before at Ole Miss, found it. And at that level, he absolutely rakes at the plate. Righties, lefties, he sees the ball extremely well. He gets the barrel out to it. Again, he's got very quick hands to make it happen. I think he's the kind of guy that when you draft him, you know that you're getting a guy that's got a high talent level, but you also know you're getting a guy that's going to give you everything he's got to get to that point in the big leagues. And when he's in the dugout and he's in the big leagues, he's not going to take it for granted. He's going to give a lot of high energy, and he's going to make everybody else around him better.
Jackson, this is a great spot for you to pop into, because from an analytical perspective, he fits the mold of what a lot of analytical guys like. And I'm going to let you roll into that with his pull rate, his fly ball rate, and, what he does as a hitter.
Yeah, this is a guy who loves to pull the ball and loves to hit the ball in the air. This year had a 44% fly ball and a 27% line drive rate. He is trying to do damage to the other team when he is in the box. He's not trying to slap singles around. He's trying to hit the ball over the wall, hit the ball in the gap. And there's spots for both of those type of guys in your lineup. The slapping the singles and trying to hit bombs. And this is a guy who's trying to do damage when he is in the box. This is another guy who I watched play live, and Flex kind of said, just looking at his height, weight, doesn't look like a big guy. You see him in person, he's a massive human who can do a lot of damage to a baseball very quickly. I love Andrew Fisher. I think this is a guy who can play multiple positions, can potentially play corner outfield if you need him to as well. And I love the fire he plays with on the field. He plays pissed off. And sometimes that's good. Playing pissed off can be good sometimes.
We talked about it with Caden Bodine, right? He's like, there are those guys where you can kind of get away with missing over the plate if your stuff's good enough. He is not that guy. You cannot miss over the plate. You said when you guys played against them, you guys hit him 3 times. I don't take that as indicative of you guys not wanting to throw to him. I take that as indicative of you guys knew if you were going to get him out, you got to get in on him. You cannot be anywhere over the plate. You can't be on the outer half in any way, shape, or form. And sometimes trying to get on the inner half on guys gets him hit. He also stands over top of the plate. So it comes with the territory. He's also all bundled up in all the gear that he needs to be standing over top of the plate. But, you do what you have to do as a pitching staff to try and get a guy like that out. But like I said, when you leave it over the plate to a guy like that, he does not miss.
Another impressive thing with him, 42 strikeouts to 63 walks. Typically, guys like this are higher strikeout guys who like to pull the ball in the air. I think he does a great job of knowing when to do his damage and on what pitches to do his damage and not to chase out of the zone to try to do that damage.
63 walks in a college season is insane.
Yeah, almost 1 per game.
That is so high.
This is a great time for us to say our favorite word, pitch selection. Okay, I said it. It made the episode. Perfect. Good job. Andrew Fisher, great player. We're hoping you guys enjoyed our first unveiling of this. We'll run through them real quick again. At number 30, we have Gavin Feen coming in, third baseman out of Great Oaks, California, prep player, 18 years old. At number 29, Max Ballou, an outfielder out of the University of Texas. At number 28, Patrick Forbes, a right-handed pitcher out of Louisville. At number 27, Quentin Young, a corner outfielder, third baseman out of Oaks Christian, California. At number 26, Gage Wood, a right-handed pitcher out of the University of Arkansas. At number 25, Caden Bodine, a catcher out of Coastal Carolina. At number 24, Riley Quick, a right-handed pitcher out of Alabama. At number 23, Steele Hall, a shortstop out of Hewitt, Trussville, Alabama. Number 22, JoJo Parker, a shortstop middle infielder out of Purvis, Mississippi. And at number 21, Andrew Fisher, a corner infielder out of the University of Tennessee. Make sure to join us on Friday on Twitter to find out who is in the number 20 to number 11 slots. And make sure you join us next week on the pod as we deep dive into those slots at 11 to number 20. We hope you guys really, really enjoyed the segment. We're excited, as already stated, to share more next week. And again, check in with us on Friday on Twitter. Flax, it's time for a little story time. And, you know, we haven't had story time yet on this podcast. It was always going to happen eventually. But Colson Montgomery, for those of you who don't know who he is, as Flax reminded me I probably should tell you, former first-round pick for the White Sox, top 40 prospect in all of baseball coming into the season, 6'3", 230-pound shortstop, hits left-handed. Ton of upside with this guy. And there was a lot of reasons to love what you had in him. And here we are. Didn't make the roster out of spring training, and a lot of people questioned why. He had some issues to start his season in AAA. And now we're seeing a little bit of a resurgence, but this was something that we felt like we needed to explain and talk to people about how it happened. And it's a very interesting road to get to where we are today on June 30th with Colson Montgomery. Started off spring training slow and then had back spasms that derailed his spring training. Doesn't end up making the roster. Gets outwardly stated that, hey, listen, we love this guy, but we want to re-ramp him up. We don't want to push him into this quick transition to the highest level in baseball, and ultimately made the decision that he was going to go to minor league spring training and have an opportunity to ramp himself up at the AAA level. In 2025 spring training, he had 9 ABs, slashed 111, 111, 444 with a home run. Flax, tell us a little bit more about his start at the AAA level and what led to probably the biggest piece of this.
Yeah, I think that when we really sat down and we picked apart Colson Montgomery, obviously a slow start to the season and coming off of a tough spring training where you're ramping up in the offseason, getting to it, high expectations, and you end up in a situation where you're on one of the first levels of roster cuts, you don't get a ton of at-bats, you're coming off injury. And I like what Chris Getz, the White Sox GM, did. I like that he said, you know what, we're going to start him in the minor leagues. We're going to make that known right out of the gate. We're going to send him to minor league spring training where the ramp-up is just a little bit longer, give him time to get healthy, give him time to get going. I think part of that messes with your timing as a hitter. I think part of it messes with your confidence as a player. But when we saw the physical body movements that Colson Montgomery was making as a hitter, it was very big and it didn't feel very engaged at the plate. So he starts in the minor leagues, in the minor league season, 149, 223, 255, in 103 plate appearances, 43 strikeouts to 7 walks. So what that tells me is he's not swinging at good pitches to hit. The disparity in walks to strikeouts being that big tells me that he's chasing out of the zone a lot. Had 3 home runs, had 6 RBIs, over 103 plate appearance stretch. Those 6 RBIs, I'm guessing, because I'm not sure, probably only came from those 3 home runs, especially when you're batting 149. What I noticed when I started to watch video was he did seem a little bit drifty. And what I mean by that is his entire body was moving towards the pitcher while the pitch was coming at him. What he's doing there is moving his head forward and speeding up the game. He's speeding up the pitch. He's speeding up his body. It's really hard to hit a baseball when you do that. And so what it seems like was happening is he wasn't recognizing pitches well. He felt like he was seeing the right pitches to hit, and pitchers were taking notice and throwing pitches that were off the edges of the plate and getting a lot of swings and misses. Ergo, 43 strikeouts and 103 plate appearances. Almost half. Not great. So that was a start to his AAA season. Definitely not what he wanted. But again, Chris Getz really, really focusing on development of players in this new age of Chicago White Sox baseball, made a big change and said, listen, we're going to take you out of live game situation, live at-bats. We're going to send you to the complex league, and we're going to have you focus on just the hitting portion of baseball and getting yourself right and getting yourself back into a space where you know what your body's doing. And I know that was where you and I really sat down and said, what changed? Because it obviously changed because it's gotten better. What did you notice when you first started looking at it and you started looking at the situation?
Yeah, so on April 29th, this is when he hit the day after he had 103 plate appearances and was not playing well, Getz decided to make this move and send him to the team facilities in Arizona to make a change. This is something that's a very scary statement because a lot of times in baseball when guys at a high level end up in a scenario like this, you don't see them come back the same way, especially guys with these levels of expectations. I mean, this is a difficult thing to do. To Getz's credit, this is something that they've done with multiple different players, even guys who are performing well, which is take them out of game situations and put them out in Arizona and allow them to work on things outside of it. He did it with Hagen Smith and a couple of the other pitchers recently.
Yep.
So Getz really flexing his muscle and the focus of that developing players. On May 3rd, a couple days after this is announced, they basically stated that Montgomery's day-to-day routine in Arizona was going to include working in the batting cages with the director of hitting, Ryan Fuller, which I love. And also it was going to include fielding ground balls, weightlifting, running, and really keeping himself in good condition so he can return to game action when they're ready.
And a real quick interjection here. For those that don't know, Ryan Fuller was actually one of the Orioles hitting coaches in 23 and 24, 2023 and 2024. If you look at what the Orioles have produced over the last 4 to 5 years, it is a lot of really good young hitters. Ryan Fuller knows how to help hitters make adjustments. He knows how to help hitters understand what they're facing, not only as a hitter, as their own body, but also understanding the game in front of them. I would not be surprised if a large portion of working with Ryan Fuller was also talking through how he was being attacked as a hitter by these pitchers, reshaping his approach at the plate to better understand how he can manage and handle the way pitchers are throwing him so that he can actually get better pitches to hit to be successful now that the swing is going to be back where it needs to be.
And I'm going to be really quick on this, but I really want to make sure that part of this quote gets read because it says a lot about Colson Montgomery and his credit to how difficult this situation may be. In a SI.com article by Jack Ankeny, I apologize if I said that wrong, the assistant GM Josh Bradfield stated that as a former player too, he said, I think knowing that the goal was to put him on a fast trajectory to get him back to where we all know he could be and eventually back up here, I think he went into it with the right mindset and got a lot out of it. I think that's super important. We are talking about a highly talented, high upside player who has now been taken out of AAA baseball and been sent back to a complex league he hasn't been in years in order to work on his craft. A guy who thought he was really close to making the jump to the highest level of baseball. So kudos to Montgomery on that, especially hearing that he dealt with a lot of this extremely well. So we move to May 13th in our story here. And Colson Montgomery back playing AAA baseball for the Chicago White Sox organization. And in the 29 games since then, which these numbers come from 6/29 on Sunday, Montgomery has excelled, Flax. Slashing 270, 349, 550, a WOBA of 390, 6 home runs, 9 doubles, 2 triples. Again, I just told you 17 extra base hits in a very similar time frame of where he had 4 in his previous stint this year, 16 RBIs. Changes happened. And I'm going to now go back to the question that you mentioned earlier here, which is, what's the big difference that we're seeing? I'm going to let you talk about what you saw in his swing, but when I look at the analytics, the biggest piece was he looked like he was taking a better approach. He was seeing the baseball better, and more than anything, the pitch selection, stating it again on this podcast, was back to where Colson Montgomery's pitch selection just normally is. He took his 41.7% K rate in those first 24 games, and he knocked that down already to 28.6%. His walk rate went from a 6.8% to an 8.7% in this second stint. What did all of this do for him? Well, it's letting him put the ball in play harder. Surprise, surprise. His ISO jumped 173 points from 106 to 279. His slug over doubled from 255 to 550. And again, I mentioned the extra base hits piece, which for a guy who is 6'3" and over 200 pounds, who you know is a middle-of-the-order producer for you.
Better be hitting extra base hits with that frame.
Absolutely. His 4 extra base hits in the first 24 games to now this 29-game stint, he's had 17 extra base hits. It's awesome to see analytically and within the numbers that he does look like he's back on the track. Flax, what did you see in his swing?
In his swing, just the physical side of it, I saw a much more shortened stride. And what I mean by that is if you think about some hitters, and we talked about Jock Peterson when we were talking about JoJo Parker, it's a high leg kick guy. It's a guy that kind of hangs in the air with a leg kick and then gets his body going. And we talked about before, the tough part about that is if your body's not in sync, your head can go with your body, even once that front foot hits the ground. If that head goes with the body when the front foot hits the ground, you're speeding the game up. For some guys, being able to control your body, get the foot down, and keep the weight back and keep the head back and stay engaged in your lower half, when you do that, is really difficult. It was very apparent for Colson Montgomery. That was a tough thing to do this year. It may have worked all the way up until now. His body's now out of sync, and we got to find something new that works. So they shorten the stride. It's not as much of a hanging leg as much as it's a lift and place, and the ability to get the foot down faster allows his body to stay a little more still. So you start to see his head move less. You start to see him recognize pitches a little bit better. You start to see him not drift as much through the ball, and you really start to see a change in the way he's hitting the baseball. The home runs that you'll see we pulled up for the thread that we're going to put out on Twitter, the side-by-side, the home run from before he went to the complex league is a very long swing, very unbalanced swing that he did happen to connect with, and he hit it a long way, but it is not a large backspin, direct to right field fly ball. It's kind of a hooking high fly ball. The home run that he hits post-complex league is a quick foot down, drive through the ball, line drive up the middle that just continues riding out in the wind and carrying to dead center field. The difference in control of his body is so apparent because his feet are on the ground. He's giving himself a base. When you really start to look at the swing, you can even tell how much more engaged his lower half and his coil is in his load to get in himself ready to swing at that pitch and take his A swing. So I'm really excited that not only is he making the adjustment in the swing, but he's making the adjustment around his approach as well, right? The fact that the walk rate the K rate, has lowered so dramatically, 12% in the same time period, tells me he's walking exponentially less. You need to have a really low walk rate.
Striking out exponentially less.
Striking out exponentially less. You need to have a really, really low strikeout rate in the second half of those games. Again, he was literally striking out almost half the time. And now he has shrunk that in total a large amount. So it's all very good to see. Again, like I talked about with Ryan Fuller, the likelihood that he did not make a really big adjustment in the way that he was being approached and what he was choosing to swing at and looking to get to swing at, I think is also a massive part of the equation.
Yeah, and look, big thing here is we want to give some flowers to Colson Montgomery for taking what was obviously a very difficult situation, and it's apparent that he is doing everything in his power to make the best of it. And again, this is, as we equate it to our own lives and our own jobs, this is a guy who has expectations for himself. This is his livelihood. He ended up in a poor situation that, partially he put himself in, right? Partially the injuries put himself in, and it was a tough hand to be dealt. But he obviously really took it by the horns. And then secondly, let's make sure we give our flowers to Getz, Fuller, and the White Sox organization for being willing to take a very different approach than most organizations might have in this scenario. Again, we're talking about this news came out, and a lot of people said, what? We're sending who to where? Why would we do this? And right now, Getz and team look like geniuses. We'll see if that continues, but really, really love this topic. So hope you guys enjoyed the story. You'll see the thread on Twitter this week on Wednesday. Flax, let's close it out with one of our favorite segments, the craziest seasons you've never heard of. Flax.
Yes.
What's your season?
My season is Hideki Matsui's 2003 season, where he played 163 games in a regular season. Yes, 163 games. That was also his rookie year. For those wondering, how in the world did Hideki Matsui play 163 games? Which, first of all, the fact that he was going to play 162 is incredible. But he played 163 because there was a point in the middle of the 2003 season where the Orioles and Yankees game had to be called after 5 innings because of weather. And the game was actually called in a tie. So originally the Yankees had a record of 161 and 1. And the league decided, nope, we really need this game to be played. It's really important. So what the league ended up doing was they actually gave everyone who played in that game credit for whatever stats they had accrued in that half a game. Then they played an extra game against the Orioles to completion to have a record of 101 and 61 for the season. So in the standings, technically they played 162, but for the players of the Yankees and the Orioles, they got extra stats that year, which included Hideki Matsui playing every single day for the New York Yankees. Wild season.
Unreal. When you initially came to me and said 163 games, the wheels started turning, trying to figure out how in the world that was possible.
It was because of Hurricane Isabel. That's how it was possible.
Crazy, right? You never knew a hurricane could bring something like that to this, but here we are. Mine is going to be one that, I'll be honest, you found it, but I really enjoyed digging into this season. How about Manny Ramirez's 1990 season with the Cleveland Indians? He had 165 RBIs that year. He led the league in RBIs. He led the league in slugging at 663. He led the league in OPS at 1,105. He led the league in OPS plus at 174. He led the league in WOBA at 460. And he was third in the MVP voting.
He did win a Silver Slugger, so that's nice.
Yeah. Sure. Didn't win the MVP, but, Pudge Rodriguez was pretty good that year. Pedro Martinez was pretty good that year. And, his teammate, Roberto Alomar, wasn't half bad either. Just a very interesting season overall. I can't even imagine somebody leading the league in those statistics. And also, by the way, hitting 44 home runs, 3 triples, and 34 doubles and not winning the MVP. He slashed 333, 442, and 663.
Can I say what's even more impressive about all that was how tight that MVP race was that season in the AL compared to the NL? I mean, Chipper Jones ran away with it in the NL. And then on the AL side, you had 4 guys that were in the 225 plus in points voting. Like, very much all had a shot, 1 vote swings one way or another. Really 4 incredible seasons. I will say, I think across the board, Derek Jeter got kind of snubbed that year as far as MVP voting went, being behind Palmeiro. And I think it was just because of the home runs, because he only hit 24 that year. But the man had 219 hits and hit damn near 350. Had an 8 WAR, pretty solid year for Jeets that year. But fell all the way down to 6th in the MVP voting when it was all said and done.
Yeah, I can't disagree. And the guy that you decided to put's name on your spot today, which nobody can see, Sean Green, the man, the myth, the legend himself, was actually 9th in MVP voting that year. So
nobody can see it, but when we do these on our live stream, we always put a Major League Baseball player's name. And I put Sean Green actually for a very specific reason. Do you know what that reason is?
I don't.
So the people who created Backyard Baseball also today announced that I believe on July 5th, they are bringing back the 2001 version of Backyard Baseball to mobile devices and Steam, which I believe was the year it included Cal Ripken, Sean Green, and others.
Love that.
So.
I love that you saw that. That's even better.
That's what I have to do during my day.
As always, thank you guys so much for spending part of your day with us here on Baseball Unstitched. Like, follow, subscribe, share the podcast. We appreciate being here with you guys. Make sure to interact with us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you enjoy social medias. But past that, we've got a lot of great draft coverage coming up for you guys. We're really zoned in on this and focused. We want to make sure that not only do you understand the draft, but you get an opportunity to really hear our thoughts on some of these prospects. So stay with us. We've got some other cool things in the pipeline that you'll hear about soon. But past that, as always, have a great week.